Zero or Hero, that obviously YouTube famous series that's been going on for forever, man, that's so popular with everyone.
Got him! Got him!
And now we're getting into the 5th installment, which is going to be comparing Bleach and Yu Hakusho. And you may not think that these two series have that big of a connection, but in fact, Bleach takes a lot of inspiration in the way that like the story progresses, and just like the way that a lot of the characters like are kind of in it, and just like how they're going to like interact or whatever. And I'll explain that as the video goes on. So now getting into the topics. So basically, Zero Hero is a series where I compare two series that have a strong theme of heroism, and then I just go based on that and which one has the better heroes, and at the end of the video I just rank all of them. So now getting into the contents of the video. So, heroism in Yu Hakusho. Heroism in Yu Hakusho is kind of a strange example because we've seen a lot of different moments with characters there, but you have people like Yusuke who are kind of forced into this because Yusuke kind of died, and then of course he had to be there for a kind of obligation or a job, and that's the same thing that's happened with a bunch of other characters. But that doesn't mean that they haven't exhibited heroic feats, and in fact they've exhibited a ton of heroic feats as we've seen throughout the runtime of the show. So it just goes to show that heroism doesn't necessarily mean like what you're trying to do, but it also means like you just being able to go out and just like save people, like what heroism is supposed to be. And in a series like Yu Hakusho, it's not just a job but an obligation, because obviously they have to keep like these spirits from coming in and messing with the demon world, and without that then a lot of things would get a lot more chaotic with what we've seen what some of these demons are capable of. So of course it's not just that, but it's power coming from their attitudes towards like spiritual power. So with someone like Kuwabara, it's easy to see them like become someone that's kind of forced into this, because Kuwabara specifically had a lot more like spirit vision, and he could like sense spirits and understood spirits better. So that's why he was kind of able to be let into the organization as well, even though he had to prove himself during numerous amounts of feats, not just like with his actual like abilities, but like with his character as well. So being a hero in Yu Hakusho is about like having not just that heroic spirit, but having the ability to do it as well, because there could be like some kind of random human that wants to do this, but they're gonna get killed immediately because they do not have the capabilities to handle some of the foes that are coming up in Yu Hakusho. So now moving on to heroism in Bleach. And Bleach is a very similar example with how like the story and plot progresses, as I said before. But you have characters like Ichigo, who kind of also thrust into this because he became like a substitute Soul Reaper. But because of that, it just made him be more like adept with dealing with these situations, but it also made him more equipped with being able to save people he cares about, like his little sisters and like his dad, I guess. And it also made him be able to grow and evolve as a person, as he got to like avenge his mother and do all these other things. So through that, he was able to exhibit a ton of heroic feats, and he did like a ton of heroic stuff. But heroism in Bleach does not extend it to like one character doing whatever. It's also like mainly focused on the 13 court guard squads, and with the captains in particular, they've probably done some of the most heroic stuff throughout the entire story, which is like the sheer number of cases they've like been able to complete surrounding hollows, and being able to not just do that, but like being able to save random people or whatever, even if they don't necessarily want to, because it's more about like competition and being able to not just like save people, but go in and being able to handle different situations, even if they're not necessarily out to do it for heroic reasons specifically. And you sometimes see situations where like the vice captains are trying way harder than the regular captains because they're trying to get to this position, but they end up doing like way more like heroic stuff along the way. So heroism in Bleach is not necessarily about like being heroic or being a hero specifically. It's about being able to show your merit in battle, and like being able to not just assess the situation, but come in and like solve all these problems that are going on within the soul society and within the human world. Now moving on to like regular heroes. So any of like the four main characters, being Yusuke, Kuwabara, Kurama, or Hiei, could obviously be considered heroes in our mind, but they're not necessarily like seeking out recognition. And like no one in the human world besides like 2 or 3 people actually knows what they're doing in like this whole thing of trying to defend the world from all of these bad kind of demons that are kind of trying to come in. But in the demon world, they're not really revered, but for low-level demons especially, they have a kind of fear for them. But higher-level demons do not care about them in the slightest. So it's just that kind of dynamic of not just being recognized, but still going out and doing heroic work like within the world that makes them so special as heroes and as characters. And Yu Hakusho also has this system where they constantly need someone that's there to protect the human world from the demons that are coming in, and Yusuke has now just taken up this job. So in a world of like this place where there's like these chaotic creatures coming in and trying to do this, there always has to be someone that's there to kind of stop them. And now, as we know in the story, they've been 3 so far, Yusuke being like the most recent one, but none of them were specifically trying to do it for heroics, and they all had their reasons for joining. So even if they did that, they're considered heroes by a lot of people until, as we know, what happened with the first one, where he kind of turned baddie. So now moving on to heroes in Bleach could be considered one that's able to not just stop hollows, but basically stop a lot of hollows or bigger level hollows like the Giganto ones, or whatever kind of like threat that's coming there, like the Espadas or whatever. So that's like the one way that they can prove their merit and become like solid heroes within their own story. And Ichigo in particular, he's done like actual heroic feats that not just like people in the Soul Society or whatever know about, but also his family like kind of knows that he's been doing this for them, and that makes him like more heroic in their minds and in everyone else's minds. But then once again, the 2 series are very similar, and then you have people like Ginjo, who was the original like substitute Soul Reaper, and he kind of had that same kind of position as Ichigo, but he also ended up turning baddie, even though he was once considered like a heroic person in the past for the things that he was able to do to stop threats like hollows that are coming in and trying to destroy what kind of order the human world has and kind of mess with the balance of life and death. So now moving on to the categories. The top 3 heroes I chose for Yu Hakusho are Yusuke, Hiei, and then Kurama. Yusuke just because of the sheer amount of feats he's done in the story. Hiei because even though he's not necessarily in it for the greatest reasons, he does do a lot of heroic feats throughout the story. And Kurama because he not just like has done a lot of things, but he probably embodies like that kind of hero spirit the best out of any of the characters that I've mentioned so far. So now moving on to heroism, which I would say is Kurama, Kuwabara, and Yusuke. Kurama for things that I mentioned previously, Kuwabara because he has not just like that spirit, but he tries really hard to kind of not just do that, but with his competition with Yusuke, it helped him like grow in a healthy way. So now also Yusuke because he's pretty good at what he does, even if he doesn't want to admit that he's a nice guy. He does have the nice guy syndrome. So now moving on to Bleach's top 3, I put Yamamoto, Ichigo, and Ginjo. And basically Yamamoto because Genryusai Yamamoto, he's been living for like 1,000 years, man. He's an oldie though. And basically, so because of that, he's solved like or done like the most for just like this whole society in general, even if he's not the greatest guy that kind of has the power to like burn anything. So number 2, Ichigo, kind of self-explanatory. Then number 3, Ginjo, because he has proved his merit with the amount of feats that he's done. Ichigo because of all the stuff he's done. Then I would put as number 2 Shinji because as a member of the Visors, he didn't just like try to do that, but he's worked in secret like for the entire time and done like a bunch of other heroic stuff in the background. And for number 3, I would put Urahara because he's done a lot for the story in the background with all his gadgets and all the other stuff. So now moving on to the top of the combined categories. So for that, it's Yamato, Ichigo, and Yusuke, and then I would put Ichigo, Kurama, and then Shinji. And that's pretty much it for the video. If you did like, please do like, comment, subscribe, and all that other stuff. And let me know in the comments what you would pick for these 2 categories as well. And I'll see you in the next video.